Good afternoon. So very excited to be the moderator for this next panel. We've got a lot of material to cover, so we're going to get right into it. But before I do that, three things I want to make mention of. First, as you could imagine, putting on an event like we put on here requires enormous amount of effort by a lot of different people. And so I sit up on stage and people tell me nice job and everything, and that's appreciated. But really what I would really appreciate right now is I'm going to recognize the team, broadly speaking, who's helped make this happen, and we're thrilled with the way it's gone. We very much appreciate your time. But first, I just want to acknowledge the entire GSV team, but specifically, I would like to recognize Kerry Rodagero, Michael Cohn, and then of course my partner of many years, Deborah Quazzo, for the incredible effort they put in. If you could give them a hand. And then the Arizona State team, which is many, but in particular, Julia Harrison and Julia Rosen, my great friend Julia Rosen. Julia Harris is another friend of mine. Julia Rosen, as well as Phil Regier. But the entire partnership with Arizona State is so spectacular. Such a not only progressive university doing amazing things, but such incredibly nice people. And so if you give them a round of applause, I'd appreciate that too. So the other two things I want to mention, just because there's so much going on here, sometimes you can miss. At 4 o'clock, there's going to be a keynote panel in here about global education. And it's going to be it's going to be fascinating. And so I just want to encourage you to make a note so you don't think everything's done. Come back in here at 4 o'clock. And then, of course, tonight, we have our Return on Education Awards, ROE Awards. It's mainly going to be a lot of fun, but I think it's also important to recognize the heroes in this marketplace, the ones that are creating true ROE and creating impact and innovation in the education market. So please, if you can come tonight, please do. It's going to be a really fun night, and we're going to recognize a lot of important stars of tomorrow. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let each of my panelists make a brief introduction, and then we're going to get into what MOOCs are all about and what kind of impact they're going to have, in this world. Anant, please. If you could make a quick introduction yourself, sure. And then.
I'm Anant Agarwal. I'm the president of edX. I'm also a professor of electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. edX is based in Cambridge. We're a nonprofit MOOC provider.
Okay, I'm Josh Coates. I'm the CEO of Instructure. Instructure provides the Canvas learning management system. We also have Canvas Network, canvas.net, which is a MOOC platform.
I'm Andrew Ng, co-founder of Coursera. About a year and a half ago, my friend Daphne Collar and I had launched the MOOC movement out of Stanford, and today with 62 university partners, 333 courses, and over 3.2 million students, we are by far the largest MOOC platform in the world.
And I'm Felice Noodleman, Chancellor of Antioch University, and we're one of the proud partners to offer university credit for MOOCs. And prior to Antioch University, I was Executive Director of Education for the New York Times.
So we're going to just kind of set a base. You can't be almost breathing and not be aware of MOOCs. But I think a common definition of what a MOOC really is, I mean, everybody understands massively open online courses, but how do you really think, what makes up a MOOC and what's the real definition in your mind?
I can take a crack at it. So we've had online education for decades, and we've also had distance education for decades. I think what's unique about MOOCs is the M and the O, the second O. M is massive. These online courses are taken by just large numbers of students all over the world. One of our first courses was taken by 155,000 students from all over the world. The second part is O, which is online. So this is a concerted application of computing technology to education, and it's really one of the biggest revolutions in education since the printing press. So I really think it's the online and the massive are the two parts that really epitomizes MOOCs.
I think the letters are important. I think all of them are important. Specifically, the open part, because that's oftentimes poorly defined. What open means? Does it mean free? Does it mean accessible to everyone?
I'm interrupt. What is open in your mind? Is open free, or does it matter?
Well, I don't think I'm in charge of defining what a MOOC is.
But
I
it's
think
basically
actually
open.
the trade
Pretend you are.
The trade press does a great job defining things for us. But I think open to me, on the one end of the spectrum, open source. Is the content open? Is it Creative Commons content? Who owns it? Is it open? Can anybody be matriculated into the course? Is it free? Do you have to pay money for it or not? All of those things are pieces of open, but I think the openness is yet to be defined by the industry, but I think that's an important letter in the alphabet. And also the M, Canvas Network courses are kind of little M MOOCs. We have 5,000 person courses and 10,000 person courses. We don't have 100,000 person courses, and that's a limitation we placed on the system because we're not convinced yet that 100,000 people taking a course in parallel is the best way to educate people. We don't think it's a bad way. It's an experimental way. But I think the big M or the little m, I guess all of them are relatively big to a 50-person classroom, though. And that's quite novel.
You know, so it was I think to me, the most distinguishing feature of MOOCs and why we were able to launch the MOOC movement is we created the technology that enables a single professor to teach 100,000 students. And this changes the economics of education, and it allows us to do totally insane things, like take great courses from Stanford, Princeton, Caltech, Columbia, Penn, and put them online and give them away free for anyone to take.
Please.
Yeah, and for me, the interesting proposition is, I mean, you have open admissions community colleges, and so the open has been around, the concept of open has been around. You can have open without a disruption of intellectual property. And so OER and MOOCs are two different things in terms of who owns the content. But what's interesting, what MOOCs have allowed is a incredibly new open landscape in terms of the distribution of information and the way people take that information as community of learners and then create knowledge and meaning. And when you open that up to the world, it becomes a very transparent endeavor. And education has been something that's been done in four walls for a long time by a faculty member with a group. And the fact that it's blown open now is what's really exciting.
I actually like that definition of open, which is if you look at universities, some of the real selective universities admit 5% of the applicant pool or 10% of the applicant pool. What MOOCs have done, and the way I think of open, just like you said, is that anybody can come and take a course. Your age doesn't matter. Your geographical, destination, your how much money you make, or what's your race, or whatever, doesn't matter. If you can come in and take the course and you can cut it, you can get a certificate. And here, on the order of 5, 10, 20% of the students are passing the courses. So it's really flipped the whole process where anybody can come in, and those who master it end up passing the course.
But the problem is it's open in that way, except for it's the credit is still exclusive. You can take the same content that someone from MIT takes, you can master the subject the same as an MIT student, but yet you can't get the credit. So it's only sort of open.
But credit is I think credit is completely overrated. I think this whole concept.
I know a lot of people that disagree with that.
So here's the thing. I think
Your CFO might disagree with that too. I think.
If someone is admitted to UPenn, and if they're debating attending UPenn in person versus staying at home and taking free online UPenn courses, I would tell them, for goodness sakes, go and attend UPenn in person. And the experience is different. I mean, why do students come to our university campuses? It's not just for the content. Content is increasingly free on the web anyway. I think students come to our campuses for the faculty and for the other students. One of the sources of inspiration to me is actually, I think Antioch's been taking a very innovative, transformational look at the role of the faculty in light of the fact that MOOC content can be used.
Yeah, so please talk about that.
So what we've done is we've acknowledged that there's this whole new open landscape, and you have these amazing courses that now anyone can take, and the fact that anyone can take it. So I've taken courses, MOOCs, that I shouldn't be taking. My background is in philosophy and fine arts, and I should not do engineering. I found that out by taking a MOOC. But one of the things that happens is that what we've done is our faculty join the community of learners and create a community of learner model so that we're helping the students through an engagement process. Antioch is known for, throughout our history, of being an experiential learning, no grades, experiential learning innovator in education. Well, we've taken that and we're able to partner with the MOOCs, and you have faculty of record in the MOOCs who are the subject experts, but all of a sudden the faculty from Antioch become mentor coaches, helping students progress, self-reflect, do narratives, and create knowledge and meaning, and actually complete through the course.
So to kind of add to that, right, someone asked, will MOOCs replace professors? And to answer that, I want to ask you to reflect on your own college experience and think back on your favorite professor that maybe you had amazing conversations with that maybe changed your life. I'm thinking about, Professor Andrew Moore, Professor Michael Kearns, who were my mentors, that to this day, I'm still not quite sure why they were so patient answering my stupid questions. And maybe you had a similar experience with your professors. There's no way we can replace that favorite professor of yours with a computer. But the reality is, in today's world, that favorite professor of yours is spending most of his or her time doing content preparation to walk into the same classroom to deliver the same lecture year after year. That favorite professor of yours is spending a lot of his or her time grading papers. And I think what MOOC technology does is it frees them up from a lot of this work so that they now have more time to spend to have more of those amazing conversations that they had with you.
I think there's a limitation there, right? I mean, some of the automated grading technologies that are used in some of the more technical courses obviously save time, but that's a very narrow part of the spectrum of education. Being an English literature major, MOOCs, a 50,000 person course for English lit, it's not the three-dimensional education that's available on campus.
So, I completely agree. The fact is, we as a society don't have the resources to give each of 100,000 students free access to a Princeton or a Stanford professor. But I think for courses like English, it turns out that the obvious technology would have been to roll out machine learning-based auto-grading. It turns out one of my students had been working on that for a while, but we rejected that because it turns out for standardized SAT testing, I think this works great.
It's hard.
But
what you're saying.
the thing is, we didn't like it for a different
It's very
reason.
hard. It's very hard to perfect, actually.
Yeah, it's hard. But more importantly, if a student hands in an essay and the software tells them you're a 4 out of 5, it doesn't create a learning moment.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do with that. So one of the innovations that I was most proud of was developing a peer grading system in which students can be asked to do the work, write an essay, take a picture, draw a diagram, whatever, upload to the website, and we have a pretty sophisticated system that lets students grade each other's work and give accurate grades, fairly accurate grades, and certainly very useful qualitative feedback. I guess your classes have used that, right?
Go ahead,
So our
please.
classes have used that, and our classes have also integrated the faculty mentor, flipping the paradigm, faculty mentor as coach and a student community of learners. But the other thing we've done is, once we started offering these, public high schools started contacting us, charter schools, public high schools, and looking at could MOOCs be a way for students to have access to higher education as a community of learners under the guidance of faculty, premier faculty around the country and get Antioch University credit. Well, that blows open the AP model. All of a sudden, a high school student, starting from the time they're a junior, can have an integrated learning experience with college credit and basically, in effect, reduce the first-year costs of college if they take X number of courses. That's exciting. And the next step that we're exploring is the development of an e-high school, a sort of 9 through 16 program that allows to break apart the silos of that navigation from students from high school into college. That wouldn't have really been possible without that open part of the MOOCs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The Brown University has put a Canvas Network course out that's a STEM course specifically for high school students. And that was probably the most exciting thing that I've seen recently is reaching out, taking that expertise at a prestigious university like Brown and reaching out to not just the local high school, because before it was a summer program for just local kids that were geographically located. Now that's expanded globally. And that is a would not be possible without MOOC technology.
I think the whole MOOC, if you look at all the technology created by MOOCs, I noticed Andrew took a little dig at edX a few seconds ago about.
I missed that. What, come on, what did he say?
Well,
about the machine learning technology for grading. So about a week ago.
Oh, do you guys do that, or?
So a week ago, edX. So a week ago, there was an article in the New York Times where John Markov talked about edX just launched 3 technologies for grading open response essays and open response questions. One technology is called self-assessment. Second is called peer assessment, and third is AI assessment. So we do all 3. And
you're trying to figure out kind of a horse race, figure out which one
and
works.
we're trying to figure out whether peer works or whether machine learning-based AI grading works. And so far, we're seeing that each is good in different areas. And getting machine learning right is very hard. And I think we managed to do that. But again, I think unless we experiment, we won't learn. And so we're trying to experiment with all 3 technologies.
Yeah, my daughter's in junior high, and actually, I just realized that she has AI graded essays. Yeah. And I thought, when she told me, I said, "Why do you get this grade?" She's like, "Well, the machine did it." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I went and looked, and I'm like, "Holy crap! This is grading her paper." So I started looking through it. It's actually not bad.
It is one of the coolest.
It's not bad.
One of the coolest MOOC technologies out there. I encourage you to go to edX.org and check it out.
Let me jump in. So what I'd like to do, and I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a chance here. But first, if you would just kind of quickly, in your view, contrast what edX is doing, and then Coursera, just specifically, if you could sort of say, compare, contrast what that looks like. And I'm going to give you the same opportunity. And then, Josh, I want you to jump in terms of what Instructure's doing.
Let's just start.
So I guess we launched the MOOC movement, and today we are by far the largest MOOC platform in the world. I like to think of ourselves, one thing I'm quite proud of is we try to be the quality leader in MOOCs. In independent third-party evaluations of the top 10 MOOCs in the world, 9 out of 10 are on Coursera. And I don't know, I think we've been leading this revolution. I think it's fantastic that there are many other people in this revolution because ultimately it's probably better for the students.
I want to hear how he responds.
So, I think we asked to take digs at each other. So
no, I didn't say that. I just said be open.
I certainly
we talk about open.
I'm just a small-time professor and academic, and so I could take marketing lessons from my illustrious colleague Andrew Eng. But so at edX, edX simply put is I think some of the unique features of edX is it's a nonprofit. So we're creating a learning platform that is very high technology, experimenting with a whole bunch of cool things. A lot of great universities have courses on the platform, approaching 1 million students around the world, and there was marketing for you. So I can do a little bit of it. Our platform, we're a nonprofit in the sense that no private individual will have profit inure to them. We make decisions at a board level based on what is going to be good for universities, good for students, good for our campuses, as opposed to what will maximize profits for shareholder value and limited partners and things like that, which is a fiduciary responsibility. I've done 5 startup companies. I know what it's like. Our platform is also open source. We're giving it away. So we built the platform, and this machine learning technology is hard. We're going to give it away. And so starting June 1, everything becomes open. Our authoring platform's open. Our entire LMS is open, so anybody in the world can take it. And if you're not an edX partner, it doesn't matter. You can host it yourself and put up your courses. You can improve the platform. So I think the nonprofit and open source are some of the big distinguishing features of edX.
So we're also open source. I think that's awesome that you guys are open source. Our Canvas is a learning management system that is kind of revolutionizing the learning management system market. We launched 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had 20 employees. Now we have 220 employees. We had basically no customers 2 years ago. Now we have 378 institutions that have adopted Canvas, and we're primarily replacing Blackboard. And so that's really exciting. With respect to MOOCs, we've basically taken the platform, the Canvas platform, which is not only open source, but has open APIs. There's no pay-to-play stuff in it. It truly is open. And we've gone to our customers who are excited about MOOCs, thanks to these guys. The MOOCs are, it's a big deal. And they say, hey, you know what, Instructure, we think MOOCs are cool. We're not sure what to do. We love Canvas. Can you guys, can we go open with this? And so we said, great, let's launch Canvas Network. And now we have 40 different institutions, over 60 courses, and we've put them online, and we're experimenting, right? Our business is selling services and learning management systems. So we make tens of millions of dollars in revenue with a really well understood business, improving education, but we're experimenting with MOOCs because we think it's an awesome service. Luckily for us, we don't have to worry about the business model so much. We think that'll evolve kind of organically. But we're really excited to participate in this market.
I'm going to get into the business model in a second, but I want Felice to look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and this might transition. And so Antioch University was founded more than 100 years ago by Horace Mann and has a mission of social, economic, and environmental justice and is founded on or based on the principles of experiential learning. But one of the things that I take pride in, and I did at the New York Times as well, was being part of something that's bigger than yourself, being part of something that is actually, the goal is to be a significant part of democracy, a significant contributor to the economic and social capital of the country. But I think what we all have in common, except maybe you would disagree, Mr. Coates, is that we're all looking for whether our model is sustainable moving forward.
Well, I love the Canvas Network model to be sustainable. I'm just not staking my company on it, right?
So I think that the interesting part for all of us is that in this age of MOOCs, of open, of the value of people questioning the value of a university education, where are those intersections and how do we know which are the models that will actually drive us and the country forward?
So talking about the business model, and we talk about not-for-profit versus for-profit. Well, to be frank, not only are we not, everybody not for profit, we're even non-revenue in terms of Coursera and edX, right, today.
Oh, that's true. We have revenues. We are heavily revenue positive.
Okay, well, anyway, so I'd love to hear. But let's talk about the
How
sustainable.
much? You can tell us how much?
How many zeros? Or?
Yeah, these guys said how much they made last quarter.
In Q1, Coursera, through our signature track program, brought in, we weren't trying that hard, but in the first 10, we were trying a little bit hard, but we just launched it. In the first 11 weeks, we brought in 220K of revenue. It's
Great.
a small number, we just launched
So
it.
let's talk about sustainability. How does this evolve? How does this become a sustainable model?
So, I just to respond to answer your question, but also respond to something Anand said just now. I think that just share with you company philosophy. Coursera, even while Coursera was still like a small Stanford project, the rule number one I put in for the entire project was do what's best for the students. And even today, before anyone gets a job offer from me, I personally spend 5 minutes with them talking about this number one rule. Is any decision you make, do what's best for the students. I think the for-profit, non-profit thing is a red herring and a non-issue, frankly.
I think you're
Universities have always
You're totally
been,
wrong.
Universities have always been a combination of for and I think
I'm gonna scoot
MIT
closer to you.
today posts videos on YouTube, which is run by Google. MIT today posts videos on iTunes U, which is Apple. I think what is important, and I think today the fact that Penn, Princeton, Caltech, and so on post videos on YouTube, on iTunes U, and on Coursera, I think is fine. I think what is important is that the universities maintain control of academic standards, and they decide what should be taught, what shouldn't be taught, and for us universities. Ultimately, I think we should figure out what's best for the students rather than what's best for us. And part of the reason for us structuring this as a social entrepreneurship company that is a for-profit was because I think I don't have announced fundraising capability, and I just wasn't able to raise the capital back when we were launching this to do this right. As for sustainability, I think Anand and I actually disagree a little bit on one point, which is I feel personally, at a very personal level, I feel very strongly that the courses need to be free. After I taught my first MOOC, I actually got emails from students saying, why did you do this for free? You should have charged $5, like cost of a cup of coffee. Anyone can afford that, and it'd be very lucrative. But I think what is a cup of coffee to you and me, to the neediest people, to the most vulnerable people in our society, not only do they not have $5, poor kid in India, poor kid in Africa, chances are they don't even have a credit card. And to me, I think if we were to throw up a barrier preventing the neediest and the most vulnerable in our society from accessing these great causes, then I think that'd just be a tragedy. And I will go to extreme lengths to prevent having to do that.
I think I could. Oh, you want to?
No, go ahead.
So in terms of business models, I think one of the differences for edX is that we have to be self-sustaining. We don't have to have a Facebook-like IPO and show massive revenue. So I think there is a basic difference between nonprofit and for-profit. You just have to ask the limited partners that invest in the VC funds that fund the startups. They would not like it if the founders went around saying that we suddenly became a nonprofit. We have a bunch of sustainability models. One of them is that our courses are free. We have 30-odd courses on our platform right now from the world's best universities, and students can take these courses for free. And we have several ways of monetizing it. One is we have a proctored exam. We partnered with Pearson VUE that has these testing centers around the world, so students can take a proctored exam and they pay for the service, and edX gets a fee for that. Another model is that we've also begun licensing courses. So you may have seen the announcement last week. San Jose State and the California State University system is expanding the use of edX courses in a licensed model throughout the entire Cal State system. There, it's a new form of course. So MOOCs stand for Massive Open Online Course. This is what you may call a SPOC. My colleague from UC Berkeley, Armando Fox, coined the term SPOC, Small Private Online Course, where the course is online, but you offer it at a university, at San Jose State University, or I suspect the Antioch courses are also SPOCs. And so we have a SPOC model. We license courses to other universities that want to use the courses on their campuses or online, and they pay a license fee to edX for the courses. So that's the second business model. And there's a number of other business models, but these are just two examples.
I think the way I think about this is it's very similar to e-commerce in the 90s. In the mid-90s, everyone knew e-commerce was going to go online. It was going to be a real thing, but no one quite knew how it was. They said, oh gosh, was my credit card secure? Or how do we make payments? Or how does eBay work? Or where are we going to, no one knew. And so a lot of weird experiments came out. The panel yesterday, they said, are MOOCs going to be the pets.com or the amazon.com eventually? And no one knows. A lot of VC money was poured into e-commerce companies in the mid-90s, and a lot of it was wasted. But out of that came some really incredible stuff. And now it's a huge multi-billion-dollar market, and everything I own comes from Amazon Prime. And so I think in MOOCs, we're in that state. We're in like 1996 of MOOCs. Right? Are MOOCs a real thing? Is online education going to happen? Is democratization of education happening? Absolutely. Have we figured out exactly how to make that work and sustainable? No. And anyone who says we have is probably wrong. But we're all learning together. Everyone on here is part of this revolution. We're discovering it together. With Canvas Network, we work with the schools. We say, hey, institution, how do you want to monetize this? Or do you want to keep it as a marketing tool, or do you want to actually make money here? Because this is an economy. I think it's noble you think students are the most important part. I think institutions and teachers and students are the most important. I think there's three legs to that stool, because it's an economy, right? And you can't just chop one side out and say, you're not allowed to make money, because for the system, for the engine to work, there's all the different parts of the engine that got to work together. I think it's noble, though, to focus on the student, and part of the reason Canvas has been successful is because it focuses on student satisfaction and using technology. But it's an engine that needs to be developed.
Do you have something?
So I think the interesting thing for universities, and many are very nervous in terms of where's the model, which colleges are going to survive, and Michael, you were talking earlier about that. You were positing that maybe 50% of institutions within X number of years won't be around.
Well, I believe Clayton Christensen actually made the prediction that in 15 years, 50% won't be around.
I don't know that it'll be that high, but certainly the current traditional model isn't one that's meeting the needs of today's students, or even the students that are going to be coming to us in a few years. What we've been doing at Antioch, and what small numbers of others have been doing that are willing to treat this like a renaissance versus a hunker down and try to be last man standing, is that we've taken a collaborative position, that it is about the students. It's also about building a sustainable model so great institutions can thrive, and you have none of that without faculty and intellectual property. But if we don't do it collaboratively or try to find these models together, then we are sort of taking this siloed approach, which has been very traditional in the education framework. And I don't know that that's the model I don't think can be sustained.
So MOOCs have obviously gotten enormous public visibility. Have they been disruptive to date? I mean, are they disruptive to date? And then they think they're, and the next question is, what does it look like in the future? But
So I would say yes. I think they have been disruptive, but it's not proven yet to degree. Are they disruptive to the publishers? Are they disruptive to higher education? Are they disruptive ultimately to education in general? I think they have shown us that there are larger and new markets of people that want to learn. What we do with that, and that's one of the things that you need for disruption, is creating a new market. What we do with that, or where we find the revenue from that, is up for grabs.
I think it's disrupted the conversation, certainly. I am anxious to see Exhibit A, evidence of actual disruption of a business or a model or a practice on any serious scale. And I have no doubt that will happen. But is it going to happen? Am I going to read about it next week or next year? I don't know. But I think it's certainly threatening to disrupt everything. It's a $1.3 trillion market in the U.S. for tuition. That's a huge market, and frankly, it's broken, right? I mean, tuition over the last 10 years has gone up 70%. The value of a bachelor's degree in a state school has gone down in value 15%. Those are going the wrong way, right? It needs to be disrupted. I think MOOCs have the potential to be a huge part of that disruption, and I'm anxiously awaiting to see that come to fruition.
So I think the term disruptive, there are definitions that I've read, but many people mean slightly different things by it. So rather than debate whether or not it's disruptive, I think we're seeing a few things. One is a transformation of continuing education. I think the old model of education, where you go to college for 4 years and then the next 40 years coast on what you learn, that doesn't make any sense in today's world, where all of us need regular booster shots of knowledge in order to stay current. So on Coursera, 80% of our students already have a bachelor's degree, and one transformation we're seeing is we're bringing a lot of working adults back into the education system. I think work at Antioch and others is potentially transformative in kind of expanding this not only to the end of the 4 years out, but also from the beginning of the 4 years into high school. And then I think Antioch and others are also figuring out the transformation that this might have on our university campuses. My prediction for the impact on university campuses is that as content becomes increasingly free on the web, what that means is that we as instructors will have to move up the value chain, where our role as instructors is not just to broadcast content, because you could do that better on the website, but our role as instructors should be to spend time with students and to actually mentor and to actually teach our students.
So any disruption has a tipping point. Think of a bell curve. We're certainly not, I think as Josh pointed out, we're certainly not at the top of the bell here. We're at the left tail end of it. But I think we've crossed the tipping point in that, research had been done in education for decades, and people knew about active learning. They knew about interactive learning, where students watched something for 5-10 minutes and they interacted with the content. Eric Grimson at MIT had learning sequences in courses, which are videos interleaved in interactive exercises 15 years ago. So people have been doing this thing for decades. I think what has happened now is that we've sort of come past that key catalytic point, that key tipping point, where suddenly it has grabbed everyone's attention, and I think there is no going back. I think last year was the year of disruption, and I think education will never be the same again. But have we hit that major hump? No, of course not. But I think we're well on our way, and I don't think there is a going back.
we touched on it, but I'd like you to expand on both. What's the role of the professor in the future with advent of MOOCs, and what's the new university look like?
So I'm happy to start with the role of the professor. If you look at the role of the professor, that's kept changing over the millenniums. So if you look, when the printing press came out in the 1400s, before then the professor was a fount of knowledge. Those who could memorize long pieces of prose and so on were the teachers, and they would keep spouting off text. But when the textbook came out, people said, oh my God, what's going to happen to the professor? Now with all the books, the professors are lost. We can just learn from books. It didn't happen. It created a new industry. It enabled a whole lot more people to become professors because they up-leveled themselves. They were not just founts of content, but they you would use textbooks and show students how to process that content. I think what MOOCs are going to do is take professors up one level further, which is rather than the sage on the stage spouting out content, it's much better to get content from MOOCs. Think of MOOCs as the next generation, textbook or whatever you want to call it. You get the content from there, but what professors can do is work with students, teach them ethics, show them how to process information, how to up-level themselves and show students how to learn, show them how to collaborate, do research with them. So I think the role of the professor will be, I think, even more important, as just the knowledge part of it will become less important, but the knowledge processing part and the whole process becomes much more important.
Yeah, so actually, I completely agree with what Anand said, and there's this fun, somewhat dorky phrase from K-12 that some of you may have heard, which is that rather than being the sage on the stage, you should be the guide on the side. Oh, I was hoping you'd laugh, but okay.
Go ahead.
I've got a question about the source of this new textbook. I love the paradigm, right? I mean, the textbook comes out, the printing press, oh no, what do we do with the professor? Well, you know what, there is value there. But it seems to me that I think both of you folks are primarily dealing with elite institutions. And so is this new textbook, the MOOC, is it only going to come from the top schools in the world? Or what's your take on that? Is that where the new knowledge is going to come from?
Felice, what does this look like?
Khalid, do you want- So I think that there's great teaching to be found in many institutions because we've been so swamped. We focus on partnering with, the top universities in the world. 30 of the 60 top universities in the world are currently Coursera partners, including the #1 or #2, or often both #1 and #2 schools in 14 different countries. But the reason we chose that strategy is because we're swamped and we thought there's the greatest concentration of teaching talent at these elites. But I think there's great teaching to be found in many places, and over time, we hope to broaden out and to support the great teachers.
Isn't the model to
So,
take these and then distribute it to the...
Well, I think the
teaching
heart of it is
schools?
that I wouldn't assume that the textbook model, sorry publishers, but having lived through the New York Times disruption, I wouldn't assume that model is what's going to stick. And I don't think it'll be left up just to the elites, but we're looking at taking courses and making them into interactive ebooks as part of the teaching. Why not sell them on Amazon? Why not sell them through Apple? You can make accessible education in ways that we couldn't before, and you can publish in ways that we couldn't before, and you can actually have the content be easily updated, navigable, relevant in ways that we just couldn't before when we were based in print and ink before it became e-ink. And so I think that landscape is shifting in a way, and I think it is open for many, many people. The question then is, how do you know it's credible? Just like how do you know students have created knowledge and meaning? So it's one thing to actually just be involved in the experience. I took a MOOC. All right, great. What was the outcome of that? How do we know there was an end result? How do we know how they use that? And the same thing, how do you know that the content you're getting from the ether is credible content? How do you judge that? How do you assess? I think the assessments, all of that work that will ultimately tie in with how institutions are accredited is really an open question right now.
We talk about, ROE and demonstrating the R, the fact, the course you took, you can demonstrate that you learned something that has an impact. But I want to talk about the currency. Historically, it was the degree that created the currency for opportunity. I mean, in the world of MOOCs, how do we think about the currency that gets created that equates back to how I take what I just took into opportunity?
I think the whole concept of degrees, I really think it's a antediluvian concept. Why do we believe that students go to a university and spend 4 years just after high school? Why do we believe that will carry them through the remaining 40 years of their life? I went to undergraduate school and I probably used 10% of what I learned at that time. So the whole degree concept, I think we need to really think hard about what does it mean. Students coming into our campuses today are much more multidisciplinary. This whole concept of a stovepipe degree in one field, mechanical engineering. Students today want to take courses in energy policy, in government, in media arts and studies, design, engineering, math. and really come up with these smorgasbord of pieces of knowledge that they need to go out into the world. And so the stovepipe degree concept, I think, is going to be questioned. But that said, just like currency, was really important. It moved us from a culture of a barter system where people who had products and people who want to buy products, there was this barter system. So the concept of currency is very important. So I believe we will have some currency, but is a degree the right currency? I don't know. I think what MOOCs and online learning will do is make us really question what is going to be the right currency going forward. Is it going to be Mozilla badges? Is it going to be a degree? Is it going to be credit? Is it going to be some other imprimatur of value, some new kind of currency? I don't know what that is. And I think over the next few years, I think we will see that thing falling out.
Yeah, so I think the world is transforming into more informal forms of accreditation. For the longest time, the degree has been the coin of the realm. I think for a long time to come, for the foreseeable future, degrees from top schools will continue to be incredibly valuable. Just a degree is a valuable signal of quality, of employability. But I think with technology, you now have more ways to distinguish yourself. 20 years ago, you pretty much had to have a degree. Today, we're starting to see that in some disciplines. So in Silicon Valley, if you're hiring a designer, you actually mostly evaluate designers by looking at their portfolios, and you care much less what degree they have. And I think the world with MOOCs, with other things, is just giving students more ways to distinguish themselves, so that even if you didn't have the fortune of going to an elite, you can now still take classes from the elites and get certificates and put them in your resume, and use this to stand out from the crowd and learn and show off to potential employers.
I think it'll be interesting as we are able to separate out sort of the symbolic and ritual of the graduation process, the degree, the robes, the tassels, the sort of that symbolic and ritual framework, and look at how do you demonstrate that you actually have skill, knowledge, competency, and ability to do something. We'll see whether the ritual and symbolic is as important, that moment, that transition moment, which is created as a transition moment, or whether people will value more the fact that they can demonstrate that they've learned. And
yeah, I think I agree with everyone here on the panel. I think we're in agreement that degrees are valuable. They will continue to be valuable, but sometime in the future, some number of years in the future, we will begin to see badges or certificates become a type of currency. And when that happens, or if it's universal, certainly for graphic design, software engineering, we see stuff like that happening today where they're evaluated on these non-degree metrics. But English literature, not sure what that looks like as far as I have a badge, but it'll evolve. And hopefully that currency is more like a degree type currency rather than like a Bitcoin. But not that Bitcoin might not turn out. We'll see.
So Andrew mentioned the concept of the boost that you get from time to time to continue to kind of replenish your knowledge. And we talk about the concept of Kaizen EDU, continuous learning. I didn't really hear the answer about what's the future university look like. And this concept of this need to not only fill up your knowledge tank to age 25 and drive off through life, but to continually go back and get this knowledge, and how MOOCs play a role both in that and the future, what the future of universities look like. Josh is looking very puzzled. I'm gonna let Felice give it, just because I think she's given a window to that.
So I think, what will the university look like going forward? Hopefully it'll be less siloed. Hopefully we'll do a better job of using multiple sources of content, information, aggregating, bundling, and disaggregating. But I'm also thinking that what we could do that would make a huge difference, just a huge difference, would be to break down that silo that is a traditional path of navigation from high school, college, and then through. There needs to be a better through line, and I think what we're on the cusp of and what we're on the edge of is this redefinition of faculty, this redefinition of at what point do you learn college level work, higher ed level work, high school work, and I think that'll start mashing up in a really nice, beautiful way. I also think the accreditation agencies are going to have to change, and we're going to have to accept more of competency-based and a different type of accreditation.
I would like to pick up on that. I totally agree with you. If you look at universities today, we have 4 years. When I went to university, it was 5 years. So we've already changed things in my generation. So with 4 years, and these conversations are happening in all our universities already today. Maybe what we will do is the following. I call it continuous education. What might happen is we do want students, I have an 18-year-old son, and he couldn't wait to leave home to get the college experience, or whatever that is.
You just lock him in the basement and say, do some MOOCs.
Do some MOOCs, right? Exactly. To throw some fluids in with a little hole, and and so
Be a lot cheaper.
a lot cheaper,
right?
exactly. And so I think what's going to happen is that one thing that people have begun thinking about is in this continuous education. Maybe what we do is we take the first year of university, and students have come in taking MOOC courses, through the high school expansion, sort of this blending into university. So you take the first year, you feather it into high school. So students come in, and they've taken a bunch of MOOC courses, and then they come in for 2 years to get the college experience. They got to be able to buy a ring with some name on it and show it off and all that stuff. And then they stay 2 years. They don't stay the fourth year. They go outside, and the fourth year gets feathered for the rest of their career, and they keep taking continuing education classes, either online with places like Antioch and other universities, or from their own alma mater, who also has online MOOC courses, and they continue, and it's great for development offices at universities. So now they have alumni connected back deeply, and it's great for universities too. So if students are on campus for 2 years, now the tuition for students gets halved. Great for universities because now they halve the tuition, but they can double the number of students. So it's a zero-sum game for universities and could be a win-win all around.
So, I think I agree with the broad directions that Felice and Anand were setting for what the future university might look like. But as a reminder, there's something that Josh said at the very start, which is that we're all trying to figure out this model. So I think we have some broad outlines in place, but we don't know what the model will be like. I can tell you what I hope the model will be like. And let me do that by sharing a personal story. It's a story I don't often tell, but I guess since most of you are educators in this room. So about a year ago in California, I was at a party, and at the end of the party, it was just me and a friend sitting on the floor chatting. In the course of that conversation, my friend started taking $10 and $20 bills out of her wallet and counting them up on the floor to see if she had $700 to scrape together to pay her De Anza Community College tuition. This is the sort of image that sears itself on your eyeballs. And I think that, and this is not Africa or India, right? This is my backyard right there in California. And I think as we move into the future and as we figure out what is the right model for universities, what is the right model for education, I hope that all of us remember what we're really here for, and to make sure that we continue to serve the neediest and the most vulnerable in our society.
Very well said. I'm going to give one last question. I'd like to answer it in a minute or less. I know this is impossible, but looking out 10 years, what is this MOOC movement look like? And to realize what you see as kind of, I think what Josh referred to earlier in our conversation, a utopian view. But what are the kind of specific steps that need to happen to have that realized or optimized? Start with you.
Sure. So, certainly with edX, given that universities have funded us, and I'd like to say I've done a number of startup companies, and in these companies, one of the first or second or third slides is an exit strategy. With edX, I like to say we don't have an exit strategy. We're in this for good. When this is it, we are going to make it work. And the reason is a large part of our mission is to reinvent education on our campuses and to increase access for students worldwide. So we are going to make it happen. And so as part of that, I think reinventing campus education is a big part of it. I see the steps in that direction where we bring a concerted application of technology to education on our campuses, where the blended model is the first step, where the role of the professor evolves from a spouting of content to more research and interaction with the student and processing information, helping students do that. And from a blended model to really make it much more research and one-on-one kind of interaction. Almost going back to the apprentice model. It's sort of going back to the beginning. 1,500 years ago, we had the apprentice model, where people would work with professors and learn from the professor. So I really believe that the step along the way is going to be the blended model, where we will try to get the best of in-person with online, where we apply computing technologies to education. So I think the blended model is really the next 10 years of education.
I think the roadblocks on this journey, the two big ones, it's matriculation. In other words, if I'm a 15-year-old in Pakistan and I just took a particle astrophysics course on Coursera, that was taught by the University of New Hampshire. Am I a student of University of New Hampshire or not? What does that mean? I mean, do they have a file on me now? Am I as part of their system? Matriculation is really hard to figure out, and that's an obstacle that needs to be overcome. The second one is transferable credit. Now that I've taken this course, I get credit, and this credit is towards that's the currency today, really, is credit, transferable credit. And if I get a Mozilla badge, it's like, well, that's wonderful, but I kind of want to get my degree, because that's what I really want. How do I get that? And if I'm taking 30 courses from all the best universities, and hopefully some from some community colleges that have some great teachers as well, how do I take that credit and then turn that into the totality of my education, the crown, which is the degree? And that is super siloed right now, the concept of credit. So matriculation, transferable credit. We got to get through those, and then we can achieve that dream.
Great.
I'm going to answer the high level maybe, and I agree with all the comments, but I think that to answer the very high level, I think that we as a society advance when we find the resources and also the moral courage to declare that certain things should be a basic human right. I think this was true for the right to vote, this was true for the right to free speech, and I think this will be true for the right to a great education. With MOOCs, I think we now have the resources to give everyone a great education, but to make it really a human right and to make a great education available to everyone and to give every single child a chance, I think it will be leaders in education, frankly, all of you in this room, that will have to lead the way.
Thank you. Felice? All right, that deserves a hand.
I think I do buy into that. I do. I mean, it's why I love being in higher education and being involved in this world. I do think we'll hit some sort of saturation point, but I think what will happen is the saturation point will be those who are using MOOCs as a marketing device for their institutions and those who are upholding certain principles. And I think then the business model will play out once you separate out the sort of drivers or pipeline MOOCs from ones that really are advancing education. And then I think that it'll be incumbent upon those of us in the higher ed landscape to figure out how we do the bundling and aggregation and work together on this.
Great. Please give everybody a round.